A 1962 Fender Jazz Bass, candy apple red, had the plates over it, everything. It had the felt spring-loaded mutes under it. Everything was perfect, and I thought, how can I screw this thing up? This was probably in 1966 when I was in college. I sat around one night. Now, I didn't drink, I didn't do drugs or anything, but I still had stupid ideas. And I had a knife and a hacksaw. So this had the beautiful horn coming up, so I immediately cut that off to make this thing look a little more Les Paul-y, and then changed this into this point. And then just started going at it, and actually all of the stain work in here, I think, was shoe polish.
Really?
And then I put,
is that what it is? Yeah.
And then I just painted varnish over it.
Yeah.
Now, at one point, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a square on here. And back when I did it, I was a total mothers of invention freak. I followed them, saw
Zappa,
all their
right?
concerts, Zappa.
Yeah.
So this was a picture of Frank Zappa decoupaged on the back of the bass for inspiration. Now, the biggest problem with this bass was having cut away so much body on it that it's... So I still have the strap somewhere in the house. I have an old strap, and right in the end of it, there's a 2-pound block of lead that I use for counterbalance on it to keep it...
to balance the actual
bass
bass down, yeah.
But this bass, this is the bass I used on all the early James Taylor stuff. I used this on Dr. My Eyes with Jackson Browne. I used it on Stratus with Billy Cobham. This was my go-to bass.
And it's essentially a jazz bass, right? It's just jazz
it's
bass.
Totally
it's got
stuck.
Jazz controls, volume, tone.
Volume, tone, original pickups and everything. It was just the rest of it that I messed
Badass bridge.
Well, it had the original bridge on it. And at some point, I think somebody turned me on to like badass.
It was the thing. There was
a moment in time where that was the
all
one to go to.
basses. If you didn't have a badass bass bridge, you weren't cool.
These may have been Yamaha tuners.
Oh yeah.
We ended up, something happened, and I ended up trying. So I experimented a little bit with this thing, but this was never an actual instrument. I have no idea.
Happy accident.
It was. Well, I have no idea how I came about getting this, but all I had was this. This was originally a 1962 Precision neck. Now, I don't like P basses at all. I mean, to me, because I started when I finally got a real bass, it was a jazz bass. So that was just, if I had started with a P bass, I would have probably liked the P bass. So you just go with your preference. But But
that's a P bass neck. Yeah.
This is a P bass neck. But what happened was back in the early 70s, kind of 72, 73, the real watering hole in Los Angeles for musicians was Westwood Music in Westwood. And Fred Wallachy, his family had this. And it was one of these places, anytime you walked in there, you would see Jackson Browne, J.D. Souther, any of the guys. That was the hang.
Yeah.
And there was a great room for jamming in there. And Fred had like the best instruments and the most beautiful vintage. I mean, I lusted after an old Gibson Mandocello forever, and he never would sell it. But the repair guy who did all their work there was a guy named John Carruthers, who's still working. Westwood Music is long gone. But I talked to John one day, and I showed him the neck. And he said, we should make a bass, let's just do something. So he told me at that point, Charvel company, who was doing replacement parts, had come into being out in San Dimas, California. And that's where this bass body came from. I went out to the factory, and there was a stack about this high of blank bodies.
Oh, blank bodies.
It was all blanks. And what I did was I took a wire, and I hung each of them from the wire and just tapped them. And this is the one that resonated the best to me.
Hey, listen, we're going to be going back to the main video in just a few seconds, but quickly, I wanted to let you know that we have got a special SPL giveaway club that you are going to want to be a part of, because it's 100% free to join. Each and every month, we give away audio interfaces, strings, bass heads, pedals, cables, multi-effects, straps, We even give away basses. And to join the giveaway club for free, all you need to do is go to splgiveaway.com or just click the link in the description. Now, with that said, good luck in this month's giveaway, and let's get back to the main video.
So I ended up getting this, took it back to John. This was it's an alder body. This would have been where the precision pickups would have been under here.
Yeah.
But in my heart of hearts, I'm a jazz bass guy, so I really wanted to have pickups do jazz ones. I met Rob Turner, who had started EMG at that point, ended up getting these pickups from him. This is their first generation. You can't see it there, but there's like a big EMG across the surface of these. And so I got these, but we put these where jazz pickups would have gone.
Did you ever think about putting jazz pickup, just single coils in there?
Well,
like
they didn't have any. And these were all they had at that point.
Yeah.
So we ended up going with these. Now, in the course of doing this, I kind of looked at Leo's original design for Fender, and if these had been there, this pickup would have been closer to the bridge, and this pickup would have been closer to the neck.
Yeah.
And I kind of thought, by the nature of the sonics of the instrument, this is the G and the D are going to have more clarity than the E and the A. So why the hell would you put that half of the pickup closer to them?
Yeah.
So I said, we're going to be routing it for this.
Was the reverse P a thing at this time?
No, nobody had ever done it.
Right, got it. Yeah.
So we ended up routing it out and putting these in this position. This is where the original pickup would have been, but I didn't want to do another hole in it. So there's two 9 volts under here because we're running 18 volts on these.
Yeah.
Now, again, I really liked the jazz neck, and this was a P neck. So I brought that bass to John, and we made a template off of that neck and reshaped the P neck into a jazz neck.
Reshaped the neck.
In the course of doing that, we had to take the frets out to reshape the neck. Now, I was walking around the shop, and I looked on the wall, and I saw this spool of fret wire, and I said, "What's that?" And he goes, "That's mandolin wire." I said, "Let's do that." He went, "Well, that'll never work. You know, that's for a mandolin." I said, "Let's try it. See what happens. You know, if it doesn't work, you know, I'll pay you for another refret, and we'll go with regular." And I don't want jumbos. I liked glissing, and everything was clicking.
Right. Got it,
So we ended up putting these on, and to me, it was a game changer in my playing sonically, the way it sounded. And then I met Dave Borisov, I think is Borisov, I can't remember his last name because there's a sax player in town here who has almost the identical name, but he started Hipshot. And this was one of the very first prototypes of a Hipshot detuner. They look a little bit different now, but this is the thing to me too, like where it's not, I haven't tuned it, but to have that with where with a 5-string I'd have to be fingering that, and I couldn't do that. So for me, the Hipshot it's an inexpensive piece of gear that is fantastic. So John ended up putting this bass together, and we plugged it in, and it's one of those things that you go, it could have sucked. It's a crapshoot. But it didn't.
Yeah. And this is this like the majority of your career? Has this been
probably 85% of everything I've played has been on this?
Yeah.
Now, when the Dodgers won the World Series, the LA Dodgers won the World Series in 1981, myself and Jeff Porcaro and a few guys got called to go in the studio to cut Queen's "We Are the Champions" with the Big Blue Wrecking Crew.
Yeah.
At that point, there was no signatures. This was just a blank body.
Yeah.
We went in the studio, and at the end of the session, they were signing baseballs and everything, going, "Yeah, I got all do it." And they were all hammered because they had won the series the night before.
Yeah.
So they were like still in like raving mode at that point. And I looked at them, I said, "Well, I'll take a baseball, but why don't you sign my bass?"
Yeah.
So they went, "Really?" So they signed it and moved on at that point. Then I got to a gig with James Taylor and Rocky Blyer and Lynn Swan, who were in the Pittsburgh Steelers. I was talking to them after they saw the bass, and they went, "Baseball players are pussies. You need football players in here." So they signed it. And then it just became this thing where people are all over it. And some people were really smart and signed like Joan Baez is under here where it wouldn't get touched and stuff. And other people have been worn off. I've managed to hold on to Jeff Porcaro here, though.
Incredible.
Clapton signed it with a pen ground his name into where it says Highly EC on it. And we did Sesame Street with James Taylor. So the guy who does Oscar the Grouch signed it as Oscar the Grouch.
Way. Amazing.
B.B. King's kind of disappearing here. Got Hugh Padgham under here. And then it's all over.
It's all over
the whole thing is
isn't it?
Merle Haggard and Floyd. Let's see who we got here. I mean, it's the thing that's amazing to me is I just go through it and it really is a trip down. Like right in here, it says, Lee, may the force be with you. And that's George Lucas signed that.
Get out.
And then
Seriously?
and then Peter Max made the little Saturn next to it. So it's, to me, this is really fun. Now, the thing that was a drag is this is my main axe. And if I would have clear coated this, it could have changed the sound. And the most important thing is the working instrument.
Yeah.
So at one point, Yamaha built me their interpretation of this, even though the pickups were, it sounded okay. They hadn't really gone full, and it was really funny. When they contacted me, they said, what color would you like it? And I said, well, make it jet black. Make it jet black would be great. The thing arrived, I think it arrived when we were in the studio doing Gorilla with James Taylor. And so I hadn't unpacked it yet. I brought it to the studio. And when I opened the case, I open it up and I'm looking down and I go, staring, because I thought the inscrutable Japanese, this is great. They're thinking jet black, jet, fire, flames. So I looked and it had flames coming up the body, but going in like the wrong direction. It's like it was sitting in a fire rather than having, purpose and direction.
Yeah.
So I sanded the whole thing down,
Did you sand it down?
I took it over to Yamaha YGD and had the guys spray it black.
Yeah.
So it was just black. Well, then I started getting autographs on that one. And when it got, and it's great because I've got like Bob Hope, and I did gigs with like Bob Hope and Milton Berle and Debbie Reynolds and all these people. Once it totally filled up, I took it back and we clear coated it. So that one's
preserved.
Intact. That's preserved.
Yeah. And you don't gig with this one anymore, do you? Is that
I do studio work with it, but the road is too scary now. The way baggage is handled and everything. I remember because one of the other companies I've been active with for a number of years now is Warwick.
Yeah.
Now, some people, they'll see you like with a Dingwall and then a Warwick. And they go, oh, these guys are just gear whores. They'll do anything. Well, when I got involved with Hans Peter, I said, look, I'm totally covered for solid bodies. Now, if you want to work together, I'm happy to work with you, but we need to do something there's no cross collateralization.
Yeah.
And what had happened for me was I had been at a bass player live function at the, in Hollywood, I forget where they had it at some big.
They had it in the rehearsal studios.
Yeah, I think it was SIR had it.
They had it at SIR.
Yeah, so they had a big room in there, and I got there early one day, and I went in there, and it was one of their star basses was sitting on fretless star bass, acoustic bass, hollow body, and I picked it up and started playing. I went, oh, fuck, this is really nice. This is really sweet. And then I put it down and I split, and then I was talking to Steve Bailey after that. And I said, that thing's really nice. I really like that. And I was on the road with Lyle Lovett, and I invited Steve to come to a gig because we were, I think, in North Carolina where he lives. And he shows up at the gig with that bass. And he said, I told Hans Peter you loved it. So he said, well, he sent it to him and said, give it to him.
Oh, great.
And I had never met Hans at that point. And so coming after that was the NAMM show. So I went to the NAMM show and met Hans Peter and told him, thank you so much, man, this is great. And I ended up with a fretless and a fretted, and then we did an 8-string also.
Oh, incredible.
And after a while, Hans said, could we do a signature one? I said, well, I don't know what else we would do because it's already, to me, it's a great instrument. So I worked with, he's no longer with them, I think, but Marcus Spangler was there. So he came up with one. I said, let's change it then. And I wanted to change the body so it was more, because with the star bass, the horns and everything are all parallel. I said, I'd like to throw it a little off so it's easier when you're sitting. And I said, and plus that sharp angle edge, I said, it'd be nice to have something with a bit of a slope.
Yeah.
You couldn't do that on a hollow body, so we ended up doing a chambered body.
Got it.
on my
Is that
signature
right?
one is chambered, and then they could lay on what they wanted to do for shape. And I love that bass. I've used that on a lot of projects too. But what happened with the Star bass was, and this is why I find traveling so discouraging. I was going back to Boston to do a project with John Butcher from that band Barefoot Servants that I played you. And at that point, I just had it in a gig bag. And I go on the plane, and the stewardess goes, you know, when you're getting on the plane, there's usually like their closet, like right on there before you go down the aisle. And she said, it'll be fine here. You just put it here. We're cool. So I put it in there, and I'm getting off the plane. I pick it up. I go, well, obviously they had packed suitcases in there, because when I got to the studio and unzipped the bag, the body had been crushed on it. So I'm sitting there with gaffer tape, like pulling it together and taping it all up.
Yeah.
I got through the session, and then I had to ship it back to Germany to be rebuilt by the guys. And of course, the airline doesn't give a crap about that. And I just thought, can't do this anymore. So the beauty of having this instrument is when I travel with the Dingwall, if God forbid something happens there, Sheldon could send me out one. And they're so consistent that, whatever they send is perfect.
If you haven't seen this before, obviously it looks a bit wacky, doesn't it? If you haven't noticed yet, the frets are fanned. So what's the concept?
Well, this is a Dingwall bass.
Yeah.
I met Sheldon Dingwall at a NAMM show in Los Angeles probably about 20 some years ago. And he saw me walking down an aisle, and he came up holding a bass, and he said, would you try one of my basses? And normally I never try people's instruments at NAMM, because the minute you sit down and you pick up an instrument, a crowd gathers and wants you to impress them. And that's not how I play it. You know, for me, that's not the world I live in. Give me a song and I'll work on the song, but I'm not going to sit there and show you my chop. My NAMM show chop. So I looked at the bass and I said, explain to me. And he told me that Ralph Novak's, a California luthier, had come up with the concept of fan fretting. And really the essence of it is if you lifted the lid of a piano and you look at the strings, the low note strings are longer than the high note strings. Done. So all this really does is temper the instrument. One of the things that I had been looking for a long time was a great deal of my studio work, especially, is replacing synth bass, pre-programmed stuff. And inevitably, whoever's programming that has a left arm that's about 18 inches longer than the right.
They do not take bass players into account, do they?
No, they're down there at the bottom of that keyboard, but they get used to that sonic, and so all of a sudden, this isn't enough for them. They want. So I was really on a quest. I mean, I tried a bunch of different 5-strings, and none of them really. That B string really moved air more than it moved tone. And so the minute I tried one of Sheldon's basses, I think I found what I want.
And did you know that he was going to be at the show? Did you go to the show to check him out?
So it was
like
it was a
happy accident.
It was a total accident.
These have got the mandolin frets on as well.
I have Mando frets on the Warwick basses.
Oh, do you? Yeah.
The Ding. Every bass that I've got had. I mean, I've got a couple of old basses that I've never found the need to do it because I don't use them that much. One of the fun basses I have is one of the Fender Road-worn jazz basses. The Mexican ones. They're great. I mean, if I play that next to like mine, it's really similar. I mean, it's really amazing how, and it's got that vintage look. It
feels worn in.
It feels worn in. You look at the metal work; it's all got patina. But for the most part, the thing I love is just having the one bass, and I'm using I pack it in a gig bag and put it in one of those SKB cases and stuff. And,
the bass safe.
I mean, which isn't, it's not going to protect it if something runs over it or something. But it's nice. It's got wheels on the case, so when you're walking through the airport, you're not hauling an anvil case with you and killing yourself.